going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of JaAR. JaAR, for those of you that may be new, stands for Joe.
And Amy.
Review. This is our weekly show where we review the Magic stories. And this week we are here with two more side stories for Strixhaven. Side stories 3 and 4, although they're not technically numbered, but in terms of release. 3 and 4, The Mentor by Reinhardt Suarez, and Blue-Green Ribbons by Innocent Kizaram Elo. And I do apologize if I'm pronouncing that name wrong. Both of these names are awesome, by the way. I really think they're really cool. And for, in terms of the cards themselves, or the story, these are Quintorius and Simone stories, respectively. For our quick reviews at the top, Quintorius' story, the Mentor, side story number 3, is phenomenal. One of the best stories I've read for Magic in a very long time. And I highly encourage it. I highly encourage you go read it. Blue-Green Ribbons was also very good. I don't think it's fair to compare it to The Mentor. I think in general it was also very good, and I think it's worth a read. So yeah, I don't know. Those are mine.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting, like, how much more than me you like the Lorehold story. And I kind of really like the Quandrix story. Like, I really love the Lorehold story as well, and I think it's probably a little bit better than the Quandrix story, but I wouldn't say it's significantly better than the Quandrix story, so I find that kind of interesting.
That is interesting.
That you like the Lorehold one and I like the Quandrix one so much.
Guess which colleges we are by her saying that. If you haven't been here for other things where we've mentioned it, but yeah, I am Quandrix through and through, whereas you're kind of partway into many of them, but
but Quandrix ain't one of them. Let me tell you.
Correct. So yeah, those are our quick reviews at the top. The reason we do that is because here on this channel, when we review the stories, we review them. We don't summarize them. And so we would like for all of you to have the opportunity, if you're interested, to go read the stories for yourselves. And so feel free to check the links in the description down below. The top 2 links will be to these 2 stories. We try to remove as many barriers as possible. Just look down below. You can go read these stories for yourself. And then we would love it, of course, if you would come back here and join us for the continuation of our review so that we can get your opinions as well, whether they compare with ours, contrast with ours, or somewhere in between.
Right.
So,
because we do care what you have to say about it and what you think, and if you have ideas or thoughts that we missed or anything like that. We read every comment and we love to see them.
Correct. So, on to the 4 reviews themselves. As we've been doing with these, we'll try to keep the review separate in between the 2 stories as best we can, but we'll try to specify if we jump between them. So starting with The Mentor, which is the Lorehold / Quintorius story, I mean, phenomenal. It's just so good. But I will say, something that you brought up in terms of me liking the Lorehold story so much, in the beginning, I did not. And not that I didn't like it, like, not like this is not a good story, it's just, wow, this is very much a Lorehold story. Because it starts off where it's like, here's this person, and here are names of 75 extended family members for this person, and here are names of multiple places as well that this person has been in their history, and etc.
Ancestry.com.
Right. And I'm sitting there and I'm reading it. I wrote in my notes.
Hashtag not sponsored.
Although, let us know.
Yeah, please.
The amount of
cool sponsorship that would be.
Let us know.
Check us out.
Yeah.
Please.
The amount of names, I wrote, the amount of names and of people and places made my eyes cross.
Yeah.
Because I was definitely that kid in school where when we studied history, right, I was the one who was always wondering. I don't know that I always raised my hand and asked, because other people sometimes did, but I was always the one who was like, ugh, just don't make me have to memorize dates. Like, I cannot.
I can't memorize things for jack. I'm terrible at memorizing anything.
Yeah.
So, but, history is interesting to me.
Right.
So I enjoy researching it as well as just kind of like, I'm good at remembering concepts. So like, But I'm not good at remembering specific dates and stuff like that, or even necessarily specific names either sometimes.
Sure.
But that doesn't make me love history any less.
Right. Well, and that's what I'm saying, I guess, because I got those flashbacks of like, ugh, there's so many names. Do I have to remember all these? What's important? What's not? And so sure enough, unfortunately, one of the most important names kind of got thrown in there in Viz Svokunal. I'm trying my best, but it's Viz Svokunal, who is one of the Luxodon, and is the Luxodon who was friends with Esterian, who is the spirit mentor to Quintorius. And that name is mentioned earlier on, and I wrote it off with all the other names of all of Esterian's 50 million other family members that Quintorius named through doing his research. To be fair, as we learned, Viz's name was not among the research that Quintorius did, and that's because even though that name is one of the most important names to Esterian, that doesn't mean it gets in the history books, because that's not the most important name to history. But like, that's why, you know, I love people's stories, right? Not necessarily like, well, this person was impactful because of blah, blah, blah. No. Tell me about, like, I want to hear from that person the time that they were the most afraid, or the coolest thing that they've ever done, or the craziest thing they ever did with their friends, or so like that kind of thing. I want to know about. I want to hear it, because those stories are the best. But reading through like a textbook of like, and he was born to this person in this year, and then
that's why history is so cool, because if you actually get to learn about the person on a deeper level in that, it's interesting no matter who they are or what they've done. Like it, because it's just their story.
Also, you can tell that this is a history story because the spirit, or the person in Esterian, who's been dead for 600 years, is considered to be one of the newer mentors that they decided to dredge up. Like, what? They decided they'd go with newer ones, and then later on we find out he's been dead for 600 years.
And Quintorius is like, oh, this new guy, you know, he's like talking about fashion and food. Like,
scones
I wish he'd spend more time talking about, you know, history.
Historically significant things. I don't know why I stumbled over that so much. But
what he didn't realize until later in the story is that, you know, his specific story, which isn't history, but his specific story is
his story.
Exactly, is the most important thing to Quintorius.
So good.
That he could have possibly ever learned or done, or, you know, the best possible mentor he could have ever had. I mean... And they
did like that cool mirroring thing where like, Esterian's like, I want to get out of here. Let me, you know, go take a tour with you. Quintorius is like, you can't do that. That's against the rules. And it's the rules. The rules are super important. We have to follow the rules. That's all Quintorius. And then by the end, you find out that, or like 3/4 of the way through, you find out why Esterian hates rules. And it's because it's the reason why his father let his friend, his caretaker, die on the street in the what was the stockade. I couldn't think of the proper term. But died in the stockade, like...
Because he fit a description. How familiar does that sound? So...
Yeah. That was, I won't lie...
It's not just their story, it's our story.
I won't lie, it was hard
American history.
Right. Well, and I was going to say, it was hard to read that part, but at the same time, be aware of where that statement is coming from. So I get it as well, to the best of my ability to get it. And that doesn't mean I sat there going, I don't want to be reading this. It was like, I read it and it made me sad, because it's sad, it sucks. And it's that's one of the reasons why it's so good. Like, it says something that needs to be said, or it doesn't shy away from something that needs to be said.
Right.
You know, it doesn't pull its punches. Which, talking about the main story from Strixhaven, that story has been very Saturday morning cartoon-y and tropey. Whereas these stories, like this one, just got real as shit. Like,
real fucking
yeah,
good.
it got like it got so real so quickly, and again, it's just such a contrast. I mean, I don't want to say a negative way, because like it's the authors writing their stories, right? I mean, like Reinhardt did an amazing job here in writing this first story, right. The Mentor, and so it's not on Reinhardt to dumb down the message because the Strixhaven main stories are so
crappy.
They're not, well, yes and no, but I mean just so like
surface level,
easily consumable. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the fact that this gets to get real is impressive. It's a good thing. It's just, you know, it's like kind of whiplash if you go from reading the main stories to the side story and you're like, holy crap, where did that come from? And again, in the best way, right? Yeah. So,
I liked that I disliked the beginning of the story because they talked a lot about, like, being poor. And in kind of like an odd, uncomfortable way. And I was sitting there going, ugh, like, why are they doing this? But then, of course, when we learn about the Mentor, we learn about why it was important for them to talk about that. And then when we learn what happened to the Loxodon that was his friend, Viz. It was, like, such a big deal. Because, I mean, the parallels between that and, again, I'll say, American history and really just our present, it's just striking.
Well, and you talk about, you know, the Loxodon being treated as lower class citizens, right. being dismissed as lower class trash, basically, right?
Being, oh, well, we're not going to find out if you're actually a criminal, we're just going to assume you are, and then you're going to die for it.
And why is that? At least for one reason in this story, is because their history is buried.
Yeah.
And when their city is found, hold on, I have it written here somewhere. The name of the city is, oh god, there's so many things written on this paper. Xanthafar. When Xanthafar is found by Quintorius and Esterian, you get to see that if what society, people are most concerned with is money, they have a massive gold, solid gold and accented with jade statue.
Yeah. The whole insides of the ears of the elephant are jade. Which is impossible because it was like a solid piece of jade. Right. It wasn't even like stones incrementally placed or whatever.
Right.
It was.
So just talk about the fact that you're saying that, or the story is saying that the people who are treated as if they are the lowest are actually the richest without even knowing it.
Monetarily and in other respects.
Correct.
Obviously.
Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And you still have those moments in this story. I mean, hearing Viz's full story, like, I could feel myself getting to a moment of like, wow, this is very emotional, right? But as Amy can attest, when we got to the end of the story, and you actually hear from Esterian, who finds his body and says, look, you know, Esterian's body is through the hole, onto the floor, limbs broken in multiple places, obviously dead for 600 years, lying on this floor. And Spirit Esterian, in his statue, says to himself and or Quintorius, he calls himself useless. You know, I thought I was doing this super noble, amazing thing, and it turned out it was meaningless.
Right.
Or he was useless, and his death was meaningless.
Right, and I was just like, what the hell?
And Quintorius...
How can you possibly think that right now?
Well, and Quintorius, rightfully so, says, look what you found.
Right, like...
You found...
You fucking did this.
Yeah. You found the most important thing to my people.
Right.
All of us. And
to history at large, because, I mean, that changes everything.
Yeah. Well, right, because now Quintorius can go back up and go to those professors who are excavating in that cave where Esterian's like, they're not going to find anything there, you know? There may be some things strewn about to, like, get them, you know, for being naive, but the real stuff's down here. Come on. And they get to the point of Quintorius kind of saying, like, this is ridiculous. There's going to be nothing here. Like, why are we bothering with this? Until Esterian kind of talks about Viz.
Right.
And then Quintorius is like, you know what, then let's keep looking.
Let's keep looking then.
And because Viz meant so much to Esterian. And Quintorius wrote Esterian off.
And it wasn't like, oh, he's a Luxodon, so let's keep looking because I'm a Luxodon. It's, okay, I now care about you, and this is someone that you cared about, so let's investigate this site more where you died to find out the real reason why you were here and why, and like, what is important about it.
Well, and kind of Quintorius saying to him without saying it, you know, you did right by my kin. And so I will repay you in his stead by doing right by you as well.
Okay.
Right?
I kind of saw it more the other way. More like, I care about you, and that was somebody you cared about. So it doesn't matter that I'm the same, like, race or what have you of your friend, but, you know, it's more like an L shape.
Okay, interesting. Because I took it as, like, Quintorius didn't respect Esterian until he heard Esterian's story. And then when he heard Esterian's story, he gained respect for Esterian, I guess, in that Esterian treated Viz well and meant well and tried to do right by him, tried to, like, confront his father to say, like, can't you take him out of there? He didn't do this. He's my caretaker. And the dad's like, well, those are the rules. Hence why Esterian hates rules, first of all. You know, rules are made to be broken or whatever. That wasn't really said, but at the same time, like, it's that idea. But yeah,
I think that's just two sides of the same ultimate coin. Is, you know, maybe it was a racial thing where he said, you gave another Luxodon the time of fucking day when no one else would,
right.
And they fucking murdered him.
Right.
And I'm a Luxodon, and I care about the fact that that's your story, so I'm gonna do what you want to do,
sure.
You know?
Sure.
Or it could also be, I care about you now because you told me your story, and that impacted me enough to make me stop thinking of you as this useless person.
Yeah.
Because he references being useless there. You know, and now I can think of you as being this amazing person, whether or not we find anything in this presumably empty cave.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, we'll just keep looking around, man.
Right.
If we find something cool, if we don't, okay, but we're going to try.
Just hang and talk and, you know, be pals.
Right. And instead, they find the most important thing.
Right.
I also thought it was...
There's, like, a parallel there as well with, like, ancient Egypt. I mean, think about all the, like, opulent, golden, stone-encrusted things that we've found from ancient Egypt, and then compare that to how African people are treated in our country today.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah. And we learn about Zyron Jed. Zyron Jed is the Luxodon who the stories say is the one to have made the city go away. And one of the things that they mention is, one of the fables or fairy tales is that Zyron Jed was a secret wizard. And that he used his magic to seal the city into a realm where its enemies could not enter and claim its secrets. Now, obviously, that's not technically what happened. Maybe he made it sink and, kept it safe there. But the thing that I find so interesting is, doesn't that sound like something?
What?
That just sounds like Teferi to me.
What?
Where he phased out Zalfir. It just sounded very similar. Maybe there's no connection whatsoever, and I don't think this story was saying anything in particular about that. I just found that very interesting, that it's like, he was a secret wizard, and he made this thing happen to make the city disappear into another realm. It's like, sure, that's probably exactly what it looked like happened to Zalfir as well. So, very, very interesting to me.
That didn't even cross my mind. To me, it was just, every tomb or any excavation site that we've ever had the privilege of excavating. Mm-hmm. It's not an easy thing to come about.
Yeah.
There's always some sort of thing that makes it hard to get in there, mm-hmm. because it needs to stay protected.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I don't know, it was just so good. The story was so good. I feel like there's probably stuff that we missed. There was so much,
I feel like I could talk about this story forever.
There were...
we would just keep coming up with more things.
Right. There's so much racial and class analysis that can be done and should be done. I want people to read it for themselves. I want them to, stop and think about what they're reading, not just read through it to be like, all right, I can now say I've read this story, it's an obligation, I have to do it. Take your time, read this story, it's just so good.
But this one you have to.
So good. I really, really like...
Because really, you will sit there and think of a million things too, and if you do, leave it in the comments, because...
All a million of them, I'm going to count.
Seriously, because we want to know that stuff, and I really do think there are a million more that aren't going to be in this episode.
Yeah.
So leave it in the comments. Not just for us, but for other people who watch this video to see. Because, it's important. The conversation is important.
Right. So then we can move on to the second story. Just because, again, otherwise we'll stay on that one forever.
Right.
So let's move on to Blue-Green Ribbons. Again, by Innocent Kizaram Ilo. This is Simone's story. Simone Wola. I also want to point out, interestingly, before we, as we move away, Quintorius, we find out Quintorius' last name is Kand or Kand, K-A-N-D. That is mentioned twice in that story, and it's in the middle and at the end that Quintorius' last name is mentioned. Simone's last name is mentioned 75 million times. The first time we meet her and every other time after that.
Right.
That's not a critique in any way. It's just
kind of an interesting thing that might mean something or it might not.
Again, it's just Quintorius, right, has a very long first name and a short last name. But because his first name is his first name, you would focus more on the Quintorius part of it, and in fact they even shorten it to Quint. So if you're going to abbreviate his name to Quint, he's not Quint Kand, right? He's Quintorius Kand, or he's just Quint. And so it's a lot easier to just write Quint. So for Simone, I guess because it's a shorter name and because it's just easier to be able to say Simone Wola. And you know what,
and there were a lot of reasons for her last name to be present in this story because of the content of it.
Good point. Absolutely good point. But there are absolutely people who, in my life at least, in our lives maybe, where you know them by their first name and that's what you call them, or you know them by their first and last name and it's just a combined thing, right? Like, and that's what you call them, is their first and last name combined together. So I get it, right? They're just different people. And so that could be it. But like you said, I really like that point. That because of her familial connection being so strong here, as opposed to Quintorius's in the other story, it makes sense for her last name to be spoken so frequently or used so frequently.
Right, because for Quint, it was about his connection to his mentor and his connection to Loxodons as a whole.
Yeah.
Not his specific family, you know, but for Simone, it's all about her specific family.
Yeah. And in fact, this story was pretty complex, I would say. And at least for me, in terms of...
A Quandrix story being complex? Who'd have thunk?
Yeah, exactly. Appropriately, we wrote notes for a Quandrix story. There is math on my paper. So I will say that much.
He wrote it, not me.
I did. I tried real hard. I looked things up as well.
You looked things up. Wow.
That's not usually.
You enjoyed a Lorehold story more than a Quandrix story, and you looked things up.
Yeah. It's okay.
Are we switching roles or something?
It's okay if you want to question our marriage. I get it.
That was never the case.
I don't even know you anymore.
But if you're going to ask me to start doing math, things are going to get bad. So it might come to that.
Notice how when I did all this math, which I don't think I solved either, I didn't ask you.
Yeah.
And that's no offense to you. It's just I know you would have been really annoyed by that.
Well, not annoyed, but I just wouldn't have been able to help in any way.
Yeah, not confident in it. Yeah. But anyway, so we have little fun things. There's a reason why we're introduced to her friends, and I'm going to do my best. This is not a language that I speak, but I will try my best. In her friends Amaka and Nanyalugo. That's my guess as to how to pronounce that. If you have a way of writing the pronunciation in the comments that you know that I'm pronouncing it wrong and you can phonetically spell it out or something, that would be cool.
Very
but
cool.
I'm going to go with Nanyalugo. And those are her two friends. They're choosing different colleges after their first year, and so they're hoping that they're still going to get to stay friends. God knows that is absolutely an experience, and I really thought that was going to be a lot more of what this story was when it was presented in that way in the beginning. And then it really wasn't. It was brought up 1.5 more times.
Well, because it was a thing that they wanted to, reference again in the end once everything changed.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, but Simone is going to Quandrix, no surprise, we all know this. Imaka is going to Prismari, and Nanyalugo is going to Silverquill. And so, because they're going to be in different schools, they talk about the fact that, we talked about this in one of our earlier story reviews, because we talked about the fact that we were curious if there was if it was taboo to spend time with other college students, other colleges' students, or if it was just, hey, look, you're going to be in class with these people all day, so just by the nature of your time, that's who you're going to be spending time with. And based on this story, it seems more the latter, right? Because of the fact that we're always in lecture, and then we have studying, and then we can go to the dining hall, but that's about it in terms of when we would be able to see each other. And at that point, you can imagine that they might want to talk to their classmates about oh, what did you think of that lecture? What do you feel like for this assignment? How does that look, etc. And so
you can study together if you're in the same classes.
Right. And so that's kind of a way of showing how people drift apart in that way, which sucks, but happens. That's perfectly indicative of or comparable to life in general. So there's that. But then we find out more about Simone's story. We find out about her grandmother. I wrote her name down again. This is a large thing. Nimiroti. That's her name. Nimiroti is Simone's grandmother. She was a student of Quandrix and at Strixhaven, and then a professor at Strixhaven. And then she wasn't. They talked about kind of what sounded like Alzheimer's or senility, just kind of losing her her grasp on reality and on her memories and things like that. And so she kind of left the school because of it. And then you kind of find out that it's a lot more than that. It's like, you know, that was a bomb drop. I wrote that in here because, again,
when you ever read that sentence, I almost fell off my chair.
I remember reading it and then immediately turning around and looking at your face. Just
what did it look like?
Well, no, I think both of us were making the same face. We were just like,
what?
Yeah. Because of the talking about the Arik. And the fact that Dean Cayenne kind of just says that to her.
Just says it.
Like, so matter-of-factly. And is that not what we've been seeing? Is that, like, of these deans, like, one of them is a shithead and the other one is, like, reasonable?
Wow.
Am I wrong?
That's a little much.
Okay, I guess I'm wrong.
I think it's...
When they identify with a student, they treat that student well. When they don't identify with a student, they are awful to that student.
I don't think it's about being awful or being good to them. I think it's about identifying with them. It's about feeling like you're on the same wavelength. You know, I'm a very blunt person. And if I didn't realize that Simone didn't know that her grandmother ended up in dealings with the Arik, I might just straight out come out and say something about the Arik when talking to her about her grandmother. And maybe other people would find that inappropriate. That's just how different people are. That doesn't mean I'm being an asshole to her. That just means I'm very different from the other person who thinks I'm being an asshole. And I think if Simone was more similar to me, then as opposed to more similar to that person, then it would make sense for me to do that. Whereas it doesn't make sense for me to do that because she's not. So, like, I think it's just a way of them to show how the two non-allied colors in the color pairs are not allied. It's just a way to be like, some people are like this, some people are like this, and they're two different things. And you either mesh with this person or you mesh with this person, and you can't have both. And that's just kind of seemingly what they're trying to do with Strixhaven.
Sure. As
like a loose concept.
I can see that. Then we can let's talk math, shall we?
That's all you.
We have the Vorzani conjecture, which is discussed in this story. Which, if people are unfamiliar, and this was where my research came in, it is seemingly attempting to mirror or be very similar to the real world Fibonacci sequence. Because it is not, the Vorzani conjecture, to my relative certainty, is not a thing here in the real world. It is only here in Strixhaven in this story that it exists. But the Fibonacci sequence seems to be very similar to what they're trying to get at with the Vorzani conjecture. And I wrote down the ribbons, right? This story is called Blue-Green Ribbons. There are ribbons being sent to Simone as gifts from her grandmother. And she gets them every year on her birthday in a secret package sent to her secretly. And it says, it contains, the first one contained 8 ribbons. 8 blue-green striped ribbons. The next one, 13. Then 20. Then 34. Then 55. And then 377. That means that it's so close to the Fibonacci sequence. So again, the first one is, so the Fibonacci sequence, for people who are unaware, is a string of numbers that increase based on adding the two prior numbers in the sequence together. So it starts at 0, and then because the next number would then be 1. And so just because you're not adding two prior numbers if there's not a number before it. So 0 and 1 exist in the sequence. 0 plus 1 equals 1. So then it goes 0, 1, 1. And now because that's your sequence, 1 plus 1 equals 2. Then you look at the two prior numbers to get the next number in the sequence. 1 and 2 are the two prior numbers. They add to be 3. 3 and 2 to 5. 5 and 3 to 8. 8 and 5 to 13. 13 and 8, etc. to 21, and on and on. And so it is so close. If you look at the Fibonacci sequence, it goes 5, 8, 13, 21, 34. Let's just look at that for now. 5, 8, 13, 21, and 34. The ribbons that the grandmother sends, 8, so 5, 8, 8, 13, 13 the grandmother sends, 20 from the grandmother, 21 in the Fibonacci sequence, 34 from the grandmother, 34 in the Fibonacci sequence. The only difference is that 21 as opposed to 20. And yet, if we look at the difference in 20 and 31, those two numbers of ribbons that were sent to Simone in those 2 years, the difference between 20 and 34 is 14. But then 34 to 55, which are the next two, the difference is 21. So you still get the 21 that belongs to the Fibonacci sequence somewhere in there in the difference between the 34 and the 55. And also, the next number in the Fibonacci sequence, you go from 21 to 34, add them together, 55 anyway. So it's so close to the Fibonacci sequence. It literally, one number is changed. And I don't know whether that was done in order to say, like, it's not the Fibonacci sequence. It's close, but it's not. Because later on, I will admit, I lost the thread towards the end. When Simone is, like, walking on the steps. Because she goes, like, forward 1, back 2, down 2, back 1, or whatever. Like, whatever that sequence is, that I didn't follow fully. So maybe I can go back and read that, or maybe if you know it, you can leave it in the comments. That I got lost in terms of, I don't know whether it like didn't actually show it, or maybe I wasn't analyzing it enough. But that was with that sequence that she was doing, she figured it out. And we come to find out that that's what Dean Ibrahim has been trying to do, as well as all of the Quandrix professors at some time, or many of them, I wouldn't say all, but many have been trying to figure that out for years. And Kian, who, again, acted like a jerk, we were talking about this before, or at least was interpreted to be acting like a jerk, and yet cares about Simone, tried to save Simone from Extus,
right.
Tried to warn Simone, maybe in a crappy way, but tried to warn Simone of, hey, by the way, your grandmother, right, Ibrahim did the same thing to your grandma, and then she got corrupted by the Arik, and look where she is now.
Right, so try not to effing do that, because it's legit fucked up.
Right, and sure enough, the second that she figures it out, and knows that she's figured it out, the next thing that happens is she gets knocked unconscious and wakes up talking to Extus, the leader of the Arik. Like, that felt a little sped up, but also fine. It works out. Because then I guess we can talk a bit about the feeling of belonging, joining these types of groups like the Arik. The Arik we learned, and I talked about when we read about it in, I believe it was the Planeswalker's Guide episode that we did. I believe we talked about that was where we talked about how that is somewhat troubling. To read about an organization that, what's the word I'm looking for? Recruits in that way. Because they recruit by looking for people who are desperate to fit in, who don't feel like they fit in anywhere else. And so this gives them an opportunity to belong.
Right.
People that have
There's,
been
like,
cast
some
aside
sort of,
or...
like, disenfranchisement or whatever.
Right. And the ironic and unfortunate thing about what happens to Simone is Extus treats her fairly. In her mind. In saying to her, look, you're not trapped here. I don't want to fight you. You can go.
Right.
Just know we want to talk to you. We'd love to talk to you. But if you want to leave, just leave. And as Extus is saying that to her...
And you're also an asset. You're amazing. You were able to conquer this amazing math problem.
Right. I want to work with you.
Right.
And then we can do this cool thing together.
Right.
Now, we know that's not the real Extus.
Right.
You know, with that guy, he looked him in one of the last stories we read last week. He looked that guy right in the face and he said, you did an amazing job. You will be rewarded for this. And then his life was in danger, so he pulled him in front and let him die.
Right.
So...
now you're a human shield.
Because he doesn't actually care about you that way. He just cares about what you can do for him.
Right.
And look, if he can reward you so that you can keep doing that in the future, why wouldn't he?
Right.
But that's not how it works out. But here, we just see Simone's side. And Simone's side is Extus treating her with respect and as a peer and saying to her, you're great, we can do this together. And then Kian busts in and tries to say, you know, get away from her, I'm here to save you, whatever. Extus attacks Kian. Kian whips up the fireball bigger and throws it back at Extus. And that's when we see that moment, which I feel like if you weren't paying attention, you probably would have missed it, although maybe not. But that Kian is able to use the ribbons to...
Simone.
What did I say? Kian?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. Simone is able to manipulate the ribbons and manipulate them through time and space to stop the orb, the fireball, and then douse it with water as well. That's not a thing that she can just do, but, or could have just done before, but Extus did say, we can conquer all of space and time together because you figured out this Vorzani conjecture. And so she did figure it out. They don't tell you that, but they show you that in that one motion of flicking the ribbons, stopping it, and after that, because she is like, Simone stops the attack and says, he was letting me leave, Kian kind of gets really disappointed and upset, and her friends, Simone's friends, Amaka and Nanya Lugo are there, and they get upset too, and the rumors begin to fly that Simone has been recruited by the Auric because of this. Has she? That's unclear.
We don't know.
Unclear. But let's pretend that she hasn't. You're ostracizing her for something that you think she has done.
Right.
You don't know that she's done it, but you think that she has. And so what does that mean? Well, it means that her old friends aren't talking to her anymore. Her old dean, who tried to save her life, frankly, misguidedly, in Simone's mind, but still tried, that dean has ostracized her. Feels like she's a lost cause.
Right.
And so what does that mean? In some cases, unfortunately, it means that if Simone wasn't part of the Auric, if she, God forbid, wants to fit in, who's the only person left who's been decent to her in any way? The bad guy.
Right.
But again, we know him as the bad guy. Simone doesn't. Simone knows him as the guy who was actually decent to her in a bad situation.
I mean, he did, like, knock her out.
No, he didn't. He did not. He said, oh, I'm sorry, the mage hunter we sent must have startled you because she heard rustling in the bushes, she slipped and hit her head on the stairs.
Okay.
So it wasn't him that did it, unless there's something that we're not being told. But again, from Simone's perspective, she got startled by a noise as soon as she had figured out the Vorzani's conjecture.
I just assumed that was a lie. Like fake information.
It seems unclear, as far as I can tell. If somebody has more information on that, let us know. But as far as my recollection is, she was walking up and down the stairs in the Vorzani conjecture sequence, and felt power in her spine, like building in her spine, and then heard a noise, got startled, spun, and fell and hit her head. And then when she came to, presumably the mage hunter brought her to Exodus, but whatever. Then she was...
I thought she had been drugged, which is why she felt weird, fell, and the drug is what knocked her out.
Maybe. I don't think so, but maybe. I don't know. And then...
She got roofied.
And then we get to the end of the story with the part I think that you enjoyed the most was kind of her going and interacting with her grandmother, finally. Yeah. And the kind of orderly in the nursing home, for lack of a better term, that's not exactly what it is, but the orderly in the nursing home that her mother is in, kind of saying to her, you know, she's not very lucid today. But she keeps talking about her granddaughter, who is the best mage in the world. And again...
And I said, when they said that, I was like, well, they're right. She's right.
Which, that's grandmothers, right? Typical, stereotypical grandmothers.
But
my grandchild is... Right. But stereotypical grandmothers is, my grandchild is the best grandchild, right? Yeah. That's just, they're the best kid in the whole world. They're the smartest. They're the best. That's what grandparents, stereotypical grandparents do, right? But in this case, Amy's right. Because of her help to Simone, Simone is the best mage in the world. She can control space and time. Right. Like, it's kind of a big deal.
She's just the wasp.
It's just very cool. And so I then also noted what I found very interesting. Simone goes to see her grandmother, puts her hand on her shoulder, the grandmother turns around, and Simone says, "Hi, my name is Simone Wola." And the grandmother follows it up by saying, "Who are you?" And Simone says, "I'm your granddaughter." Maybe you noticed, maybe you didn't. This one was tougher for me to figure out. Earlier in the story, tougher for us to figure out, I'm sorry. We talked about this before.
No, I figured it out pretty easily.
Oh, okay, well then never mind. It was tough for me to figure out, and Amy got there well before I did, so thank you.
You're welcome, I guess.
No, it's important. Again, I want to give you appropriate credit. I don't want to be sitting here being like, me, I did everything.
I don't care. If it makes you feel good, then you can do that.
Turns out, the smartest person in the room doesn't have to say that they're the smartest person in the room. Anyway,
The smartest person in the room can do math. Math is magic because I don't understand it.
That was the tagline for Quandrix is math is magic, and Amy said, yeah, because I don't understand.
I understand magic better. And I don't even mean the game of magic.
I was going to say the concept of magic. Sure. But I really appreciated that.
Because I would say the game of magic and math are probably kind of on par for me, honestly.
The game of magic is a large portion math. So yeah, that's fair.
There you go. That might be why I suck at it so much then.
But I appreciated that section of Simone meeting her grandmother and saying that to her. Because earlier, when Simone is introducing herself to Kian and her class, she says, "Oh, hi, my name is Simone." And Kian says, "Is your name Simone or are you Simone?" Because Kian's like, at this point, you've been you for such a long time. It's not just a name, it's who you are.
And oh, hell no, it ain't.
And Amy pointed out, right, what did Simone say? my name is Simone Wola. The grandmother says, who are you? And Simone says, I'm your granddaughter. So it's...
My name is not who I am. What's important is that I'm your granddaughter.
Right, or is her relationships with other people and what she is to them kind of a thing. So that was really cool. That was really well done.
If it was my therapist would say our connections are the things that are important to us, not anything else.
Yeah.
Not the exterior or, whatever.
Sure.
But when it comes to like analyzing stories and stuff, I like to analyze names because I think that names mean something. I think that your name pushes you towards being who you are.
Yeah, we have a without going too in depth because it's their privacy, but we have a family friend who named a child after someone who passed away, and Amy is very correct in often pointing out how similar the child is to the person that has passed.
Other people point it out too, but they complain about it, and I say, you got what you asked for. You got what you asked for. The end. Don't name her that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, she's just like her great-grandmother. Well,
yeah.
You named her after her great-grandmother.
You got what you asked for. Alright, let's move on.
Sure. I was done. There's one last thing I have to talk about, but it has nothing to do with this story necessarily. So, unless you have more to talk about this.
I don't know. Probably.
But again, similarly to other things, right? We noticed those things that are like callbacks or mirroring or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Maybe there's stuff that we missed. And with either of them, with any story, let us know. What did you notice? Did we miss something analytically that you want to talk about or that you want us to hear our opinion on? That's what the comment section is for. We want to continue the conversation throughout. The only other thing I wanted to talk about is sometimes on JaAR, and I apologize for saving it for last, but it really didn't fit anywhere else. Sometimes on JaAR we discuss the business decisions, poor or positive, of Wizards of the Coast when it comes to these stories, and or in general, but Vorthos based. And
or we try to keep it Vorthos based.
But let's talk about something Vorthos based, right? I don't know why it took me this long to realize it, but it did. We read these stories on PC, on our desktop. Yeah. Most of the time. Sometimes on my laptop, but still, it's you are on a computer, you go to the webpage, whatever.
It's a fairly large screen.
Yes. And I do not read it on my phone. That's not in any way to talk down on anybody who chooses to do that. I'm just letting you all know before I proceed with what I'm talking about that that's where we read these. So you may not have noticed this if you're reading it on your phone as opposed to, or maybe on a tablet as opposed to on a laptop or a PC. But when you go to Wizards' website and you go to the story tab at the top of their website or their articles page or whatever, you go to the story tab and you click on any of the stories for Strixhaven. Again, I'm only talking about these two, so if I'm wrong about other ones, I apologize. But we are filming this so that people are aware. We are filming this the day before it comes out. So less than 24 hours before this video goes live, we are sitting here filming it. So be aware of that in terms of when I've seen this. But when you click on that story, you get the top of the story, right? The byline and the bio and the archive list of that author. As well as many other things. Check out the previous story, etc. All those like clickable things. And then on the right-hand side of the page, I guess over here for all of you looking at me, the right-hand side of the page lists like recommended articles or whatever. As many websites do, including if you're watching YouTube on desktop, you'll see recommended videos over there. If any of them are ours and you want to click them, that'll help us out a lot. But that's really neither here nor there. Yes. On the side of the story, there are 3 articles. And to my knowledge, for all of Strixhaven, they've been the same 3 articles. Do you want to know what those articles are? They are the card image gallery for Kaldheim from January 20th of this year.
Okay.
The variant Kaldheim art gallery, or card image gallery, for Kaldheim from January 20th of this year. And then the Kaldheim mechanics article from like January 7th or something of this year. It's your story page with your current stories
From your current set.
that people are reading from your current set. Do you have, I'm asking this facetiously, do you have a card image gallery for Strixhaven? Do you have a variants article for Strixhaven of their card image gallery? Do you have a mechanics article for Strixhaven? Because if so, that would be more relevant to be attached to your Strixhaven stories.
Sure would.
But again, multi-million-dollar corporation, right? Making money hand over fist.
With no marketing team or
And
a marketing team that doesn't know how to do marketing.
Well, but not even that. It's just your website team is slipping up. Yes, obviously it would be better if you have a card image gallery and you have the names of the cards at the bottom of the art in the story itself. Very easily somebody could go, wow, this art is so cool. What card does it go to? Oh, the card image gallery's right there. That's super convenient. Let me go look. Wow, these cards look great. I wonder where I could pick them up. Nope, can't do that. It's going to show you about Kaldheim. Now, granted, Kaldheim is sick, right? We enjoy Kaldheim, but Kaldheim's time to be advertised for has passed with the Strixhaven stories. If you want these stories to advertise for your game, stop shooting yourself in the foot.
The only thing I can think of how that might make sense is if Kaldheim didn't sell as well because it was during the pandemic and they're trying to advertise for Kaldheim because everybody is engaged for Strixhaven and they weren't as engaged for Kaldheim because it was during the pandemic.
That's not an unreasonable opinion. I don't buy it, but it's not unreasonable.
Really
sure. I know you're looking for some alternative to try to save them
devil's
here.
advocate
Right.
here.
But it really just looks like you upload the stories because you have to, because by the way, they're not timely uploaded to that section of, like, a week ago, the story, one of the stories was live. It existed, and you could see it on the front page of Daily MTG. But if you clicked on the story tab, it wasn't there. So it existed, but it wasn't put where you would actually go to find it for when it is no longer front page. Why not both? Can it not be at both places? It's a website, so I know it can. Again, facetious, but can it not be in both places? But again, it really just makes it seem like you're being lazy in updating your website properly. Because it's not that hard. It's just going to ask you what links you want on the side of the page. There's 3 of them. It's not even like it fills the whole page. It's 3 of them.
Yeah.
And they're from January of this year.
It seems like nobody even checked. Like, because I feel like if someone did, they would have seen that Kaldheim stuff there and gone, oh, we need to update this.
Yeah. And at this point,
even if they didn't know how to do it, they could, like, tell somebody who did.
But it's, at this point, all 3 of those articles that are there are over 3 months old. It's 2021, and you're a modern business. You need to be quicker than 3 months.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all I had.
Sure.
That's
and that's regardless of what business you are. You need to be quicker than 3 months.
Yeah.
No matter what you do.
Yeah. So
it's in this day and age, you need to be a hell of a lot quicker than 3 months.
Yeah. I'm upset that it takes us this long to get to review these stories, but, you know, I mean, Side Story 4 is less than a week old, but Side Story 3 is over a week old, and I don't enjoy that it took us that long, but I'm still doing it. We're still doing it in the best way that we see fit,
Right.
without being like, okay, well, here's a 5-hour JaAR where we review all the stories that came out since the last JaAR that we made a week ago,
Right.
or a story came out yesterday, let's put out a JaAR today. Like, we're keeping to our schedule,
We're trying to.
you know, boorishly or not, like that's what we're doing. And if you have feedback on that, we would love to hear from you.
Sure.
Speaking of JaAR, next week, tune in as long as Side Story 5 comes out as expected between now and next Thursday.
It's never a given.
But we know that Main Story 5 is already out. So next week will be a JaAR. It will at minimum be Main Story 5, but we hope that it's Main Story 5 and Side Story 5. Because that's the only ones that we have left, and that will mean it will be the finale of the Strixhaven JaARs. But of course, then we'll be back after that with more. Tune in next week for that. That's totally fine. Don't forget that we stream every Monday and Friday, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on this channel. MTG Arena on Mondays. So if you're Magic fans, MTG Arena night every Monday, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And Fridays we do video games in general. This Friday we will be continuing Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 2. If you're watching this like a week or two from now, it will probably still be that, because the story mode is extensive in the best way. So we are playing through the story mode, we're loving it, we're having tons of fun with that game, so we hope to see you. I'm losing my voice a little bit if people can't hear, so I think it is time for us to end this particular episode. Thank you all so very much for watching. I do hope that everybody enjoyed. Please don't forget, we also do 2 other uploads a week on this channel and 3 uploads a week over on Video Games for All.
Yes, check them out, please.
Yes, we just started playing through The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time over on that channel. We're still playing through Pokemon Silver, and we just finished Dream Daddy, a dad dating simulator, over on that channel, and we will have a new series, which maybe we'll announce on Friday's stream, coming out this Sunday. So stay tuned for that as well. Don't forget, subscribing and ringing that bell is the best way for you to find out exactly when all of those videos come out and when we go live on our streams here. Thank you all so very much for watching, for commenting, for liking, for sharing. All of those things are super helpful to us, and we would love to hear from you in those comments, because joining in on the discussion of what we thought were really good stories that could have had hours and hours more discussion involved with them,
Right.
but where we stopped ourselves for the sake of our time and yours,
Yeah.
is still a really good way to show off your...
Hashtag Vorthos Pride.
Exactly. We got to do math, we got to do research, we get to talk about history. What's more geeky than that, I ask you?
No.
So feel free to geek out with us in the comments, as we said, but for now, from us here at the Geek for All family of channels, I have been Joe.
And I'm Amy.
Thank you all for watching another episode, and as we always say, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody!